Welcome back to the Flying with the Flock podcast, the best place to get all of your Eagles and other NFL related news. I'm your host, Matt, and ladies and gentlemen, we are approximately 4 days from the first Eagles preseason game in Baltimore, Maryland. That takes place on Saturday. What day is Saturday? Should have already had this down. Saturday, the 15th, at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So, the Birds are finally back. They're going to be playing possibly some starters, more likely on the defense than on the offense, but we're going to have to wait and see. None of that is fully confirmed as of yet. We'll talk about some of that speculation later on in this episode. But before we jump into all the other goodness that I have loaded up in this episode of the podcast, if you all could leave a like and subscribe down below, that would be much appreciated. Feel free to share this with other people. Just get the word out there, especially as we head into the NFL season. I'll be covering a lot, and episodes, in theory, should be a bit longer than in years past. Instead of shooting for an hour, we're going to be shooting for an hour 15. So feel free to, I know some of you put this on while you sleep, others put this on in the background as they work, some put it on their TV, so feel free to share it for others to do the same and create a big family that we have here at the Flying with the Flock podcast. Alright, so now with all that pleasantry out of the way, let's jump right into some of the injuries. Instead of focusing on a lot of the injuries going around the NFL, there wasn't any huge injuries outside of one at the Ravens training camp with cornerback Nate Wiggins. Who else? There's like maybe one or two other players out with... we'll talk about some more long-term injuries, actually, later on. But I wanted to focus on the Eagles and their current health. Now, I know a lot of fans are very concerned about DeVonta Smith and Makai Lemon and both their injuries, how they're supposed to be our top two wide receivers. And to me, I'm going to explain why DeVonta Smith doesn't concern me that much. Makai, obviously, a little bit, but that's a little bit more understandable since he is a rookie and he's getting up to speed with NFL pace offenses and NFL pace games, training camp or practices, all that kind of good jazz there. But first off, so for over a week now, both Smith and Lemon have missed practice. Sometimes they're not even out there on the practice field. I mean, most of the time you saw DeVonta Smith with a headset on the sideline next to or around Sean Mannion. So it's not like he wasn't involved at all, and he understood the process going into some of the play calls that Mannion had for this offensive system. But yesterday, these two were either working on the jug machines, or working on the sideline with a trainer. So that is fairly good news. DeVonta Smith was the one working with the trainer. He had most of his gear on besides pads, and so that's a really good sign for DeVonta Smith's ability to possibly come back within the next couple of practices fully healthy. He might be limited for a little bit, but he will certainly be back out there able to work out his timing with Jalen Hurts, which has never really been a question. His timing has been quite fine. It's the other wide receivers that I would be more concerned about if they missed this kind of time. And Makai Lemon, although not working with a trainer off to the side, this is one of the first times we've seen him out on the practice field since his injury, and he looks fine. He's working on the jug machine so his hands don't get cold. The major concern, as I just mentioned, with all the other wide receivers outside of DeVonta Smith is making sure that the connection with Hurts is there, because Hurts in the past, outside of A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith, Hurts takes a while to trust you. And he will take 3-4 games to test whether you're really trustworthy in the offense and whether he should even look your way. The best example of this was Jahan Dotson. Jahan was okay in his first season here at the Eagles. Not the best wide receiver I've ever seen, but certainly not like Quez Watkins' version of horrible as a wide receiver. But Jalen Hurts just did not trust him that much, so he didn't get the ball so much. So during the offseason, Jahan Dotson really worked out with Jalen Hurts a lot, so they could work on their timing, and so Jalen Hurts could trust him with the ball more. And it made a big leap. I mean, especially when Jahan Dotson had the ability to take off the top of a defense, Jalen Hurts trusted him, placed the ball where he knew Jahan could make a play with it, and ultimately, when he took those kind of risks with a wide receiver that he was on the same wavelength with, ultimately, big plays and good things came out of the offense, which was few and far between last season. So to me, Makai Lemon needs to get back ASAP so Sean Mannion can A, install his portions of the offense around him, and B, have Jalen Hurts trust him a little bit more with his availability and his availability and his ability to cut open the middle of the field, which is something that Jalen Hurts has been targeting a lot, whether it's Dallas Goedert or whether it's Darius Cooper, Hollywood Brown, Dontavian Wicks, Elijah Moore, though Moore has definitely been more of a deep guy so far this a deep route guy that so far this training camp in Mannion's system. All those guys have been having a lot of routes over the middle that Hurts has fired through tight windows and made completions with. So Hurts feels more confident in his ability, but we'll talk more about Hurts and his confidence over the past week in a little bit. And another thing that makes these two injuries encouraging is the fact that even Britton Covey, who was dealing with a hamstring injury, obviously probably not the same severity, but still a hamstring injury nonetheless, around the same time as DeVonta Smith and Makai Lemon, has returned in limited capacity already to practice. So it's not too far of a stretch that these two gentlemen won't be too far off. Maybe give them a couple more practices and they will be out there in a limited capacity. I'm expecting DeVonta Smith back before Makai Lemon, though. I will say, don't expect Makai Lemon to be back automatically. Do expect DeVonta Smith to probably be 1 day limited, maybe 2 days at max, and then already back out there running routes. Another injury, I didn't write this down, but I kind of want to talk about him a little bit, is the Jonathan Greenard injury and why I'm not too highly concerned. Jonathan Greenard has battled injury over the past season and a half, and so to see him get injured this early on is not really a good sign. But I will say, with the depth that we have and how well the edge rusher position is performing at training camp so far, off the backs of Jalix Hunt's play, I'm not shaken up too much that he probably won't even touch a preseason game. Rather, he will just be on the field for a regular season game. He's a veteran who knows how to take care of his body, and although he's not out there on the practice field, I still believe that he's in there in the meetings, in the training room, in the rehab center that they have in the Jefferson Health Center, getting himself ready for his reemergence back into the NFL. I hope that Jonathan Greenard can perform up to his expectations. Hopefully around the money that you're paying him, you want 10 to 12 sacks per season, but based off of this injury, anywhere between 6 to 8 sacks I wouldn't hate. Allow Jalix Hunt to be the main athletic young freak coming off the edge, while Jonathan Greenard is the veteran presence that knows how to lock up the edge and not let anything get by him. And the overall defensive line has been a an amazing unit so far this training camp. So overall, I'm not that concerned. I think this defensive line will play up to the standard that is expected from them in a Vic Fangio defense this upcoming season. One that was kind of concerning to me until I got more reports on it was a Quinyon Mitchell possible injury. He went down during practice late yesterday and didn't return during the last 11 on 11 drills that the team had, like the 2-minute 11 on 11 drills. The offense was up and had to drain the clock. But still, Quinyon Mitchell wasn't out there. He was replaced by Mac McWilliams, who... That really surprises me that Mac McWilliams is getting first-team reps at corner. That really shows how much Vic Fangio kind of believes in this depth corner. And if they, God forbid, have a guy go down, I think they believe that Mac McWilliams can come in and be a solid substitute for a little bit. But the reason that it did not seem too extreme was because he kind of just tangled up legs with, I believe it was Hollywood Brown during a route. And it was reported that it seemed like the move was more from precaution of trying to preserve Quinyon Mitchell rather than his inability to get back out there on the field. It was late. It was hot. It's understandable that you don't want to put your all-pro cornerback back in there ready to get carved up once again because he might be dealing with an injury or he might be he was a standout at yesterday's practice to me. But you don't want to destroy your player, especially an all-pro kind of guy, this early on in the camp. You're not even at the first preseason game yet. The last Eagles injury I wanted to touch on was a Cam Jurgens injury. He's went down twice in the past 2 practices and taken a trip to the medical tent to never return. The reason was listed as heat exhaustion, so luckily that does not involve anything with his back injuries. And to me, keeping people like Jurgens and Dickerson healthy and siding with precaution, even if they just have fatigue or heat exhaustion, still erring on the side of caution is a smarter move with these guys because we need consistency with this Eagles offensive line if they want to have a chance to perform at a high level. Guys like Jurgens, who anchors the middle, is one of those guys. He got paid. He needs to be out there on the field more, so if he needs a little bit of time off during training camp, maybe it's allowing a guy like Willie Lampkin, who we'll talk about in a little bit, to take some first-team reps to give Jurgens a break, then I'm okay with that. I'm not horrified by anything that I heard out of the Jurgens injury department. All right, so that's it for the Eagles injuries I want to touch on this week. We're going to do a quick segment of wheeling and dealing with 2 more big deals of big names on 2 different offenses getting paid. The first to me is the Lions' number 1 running back, Jahmyr Gibbs, who was in a similar situation to Bijan Robinson of the Falcons, who got paid last week. Both gentlemen, Gibbs and Robinson, were holding out for long-term contracts due to their ability and how much the offense is kind of based around their play. Both gentlemen got paid as the top running backs in the league, and arguably rightfully so. Both guys are really young, both being around the age of either 23 or 24, and have a lot of explosive plays still left in the tank. Jumping onto the Jahmyr Gibbs deal, he signed a 3-year, $67.5 $32.5 million contract with the Lions, including $15 million signing bonus and $51.4 million guaranteed, and an average salary of $22.5 million a year. So to me, this is a really solid deal. Gibbs has continued year in, year out to be one of the top running backs in the conversation, only being rivaled by Saquon, Bijan, and Derrick Henry. So when you're in that company, you kind of deserve a long-term, big money contract. This kicks in 2027. This deal kicks in. And so Gibbs will be with the franchise through the year 2020, or not 2020, 2030. Not as long as Bijan, but more guarantees, I believe. So Gibbs is now the top paid running back in the league, although he doesn't do the same amount in the passing game as Bijan Robinson does. I still feel like Gibbs is the better overall running back when it comes to getting explosive plays and allowing an offense to rely on him. The other big deal that I wanted to touch on during this episode, a little bit smaller, but still a well-known name throughout the league, that being Patriots tight end Hunter Henry, who signed a 2-year, $16 million contract extension with a $14.5 million guaranteed. That brings his average salary to $8 million. So that will extend Henry through the 2028 NFL season with the Patriots. Henry has been a solid piece of the offense. 2025 was quite quiet for him. I was expecting more out of him. Some games he had 0 catches at all, and he had very little impact in the blocking game as well. So you really hope that with this contract extension, the Patriots really hope that Henry can take a step forward, especially in the passing game, and be basically the number 3 passing target behind A.J. Brown, Romeo Doubs, and, that would be number 3. So you would hope that Hunter Henry takes that step forward, and even in the blocking game, he gets a little bit more gritty, gets a little bit more dirty, and is able to keep his quarterback protected, especially picking up blitzes and such. But congrats to both gentlemen, Gibbs and Henry. Both have been really solid for their respective franchises. I forget, how old is Henry? Henry's 31 years old, so this is probably his last deal. He will be roughly 32, 33 years old once this deal expires. So, it's always nice to see guys like that get their final deal, get one last big deal. And Jahmyr Gibbs, where is he at? Jahmyr Gibbs is 24 years old, and he will be roughly 28. So they're going to get a lot of prime years out of Gibbs, and whether or not they're going to be able to utilize that to make a run at a Super Bowl, that's to be determined. But they still have locked up arguably one of the top franchise guys in the past 20 years, and their best running back since Barry Sanders. Alright, so some just random NFL news I want to touch on. Kyler Murray got named to the starting quarterback of the Vikings. So if you're going to have a fantasy draft in the next couple of weeks, Kyler Murray might not be a horrible idea. Kevin O'Connell has a history of taking these guys that have failed with previous franchises and bringing the most out of them. I wouldn't be surprised if Murray is again one of those kind of guys. So for people like Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, I feel like this is a great sign. You're going to have a quarterback that can extend plays and allow the receivers to get wide open. And for offensive lines, this is a guy that can hold on to the ball a little bit longer than normal. But when healthy, this offensive line is a top-tier unit, a top 6 or 5 unit in the NFL. It really depends on how you look at it. Kevin O'Connell finally has a guy that can go out there and score compared to a guy like J.J. McCarthy, who was splitting first-team reps with Kyler Murray before Murray complained to the press that it kind of took away from his ability to be the best quarterback that he could be for the Vikings. So McCarthy is now stuck with the second-team offense, and so I don't think this is a horrible thing. If the Vikings don't want to go out and get another quarterback next offseason, they can allow J.J. McCarthy to sit behind Kyler Murray, watch how Murray gets it done, and ultimately, hopefully, allow McCarthy to develop. Or he could go down to the Anthony Richardson track and start a season for their team, become a backup behind a veteran, and then become a third stringer because they have looked so awful after requesting a trade. So, but yeah, that's Anthony Richardson right now. But J.J. McCarthy, I think, could still have a solid chance at being a good general, field general. I just don't think that his abilities go beyond calling the plays given to him by a offensive guru head coach. Next up is the Laremy Tunsil injury. He tore his tricep during Commanders practice. Their starting left tackle tore his tricep and will now have to undergo surgery, which will sideline him for a significant portion of the season, reported by insiders Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport. This is a huge blow to the Commanders. I mean, their offensive line was not great last season with Tunsil healthy. Without Tunsil and without like many other acquisitions that really filled out the depth and the talent at offensive line, it is fairly concerning for their franchise guy and Jaden Daniels to go back out there after a injury-riddled season and then get pummeled once again, especially off your blind side. You would hope that somebody's able to replace Tunsil's production at this point, but I've rarely ever been able to see that out of a backup left tackle. The only one I would ever be able to say that would probably be the Eagles' swing tackle, Fred Johnson. Commies, this is really gonna hurt, and unfortunately, I do think that this will significantly impact games moving forward. And whether or not the Commanders are able to figure out an offense where they get the ball out fast and they don't even allow a guy to get around that left side of the line is to be determined and is to be seen. But I don't think it's impossible. I just really hope that Jaden Daniels is able to stay healthy, especially with his starting left tackle going down for a long period of the season. A little funny anecdote that I had was there's a lot of training camp fights breaking out. Even the Eagles had one, which is okay. It wasn't that big. It was just a lot of bodies. There wasn't punches or helmets thrown. But there are a lot of training camp fights going on, especially at joint training camps where they happen the most, where two teams go against each other. There were 4 fights within the first 10 minutes of the first Titans 49ers joint practice yesterday. And so to me that is insane. I've never heard of that many happening, but still it's just funny to me to see that we continue to do joint practices, which can be good. Instead of going up against the same guys over and over again, you give your defense or your offense different looks. Instead of going over these guys over and over, against these guys over and over again, giving people new perspective is always good. But it can lead to high tensions, especially with teams wanting to win during joint practices and during the reps. So we'll have to wait and see how many more fights happen. I wish I could do a tally. I might have to do that next preseason, is do a tally of how many training camp fights we have, and then see if we can't predict it together. But yeah, so that's it for all the NFL news. We're going to move on to Eagles training camp notes that I've been taking and my overall thoughts on how things have been going. All right. So I broke it down into like day 9 and day 10. So I'm just going to go through some of the bigger themes that I've seen um, throughout all the different training camp days. We obviously already touched on Mekhi Lemon and Devontae Smith, but I will say in their absence, it's given a lot of guys opportunities. Not all of them have been able to capitalize. Like the two veterans, Hollywood Brown and Elijah Moore, I was really hoping to hear more out of them. But guys like Darius Cooper and Devontae Wicks have really started to shine in this offense and really have started to get on the same page as Jalen Hurts, which has given Hurts all the confidence in the world. This is some of the best, as has been reported, some of the best passes that Jalen Hurts has ever had in his career. And that's saying something, because Hurts has always been a tight window guy that can make the passes when needed. And so hearing that these windows are even tighter and Hurts is throwing the perfect ball, whether the receiver drops it or not, that's not really up to Hurts. But Hurts is able to get in there, get reps that he normally doesn't get in training camp. And in a new offensive system, he looks quite comfortable, apparently. And that is a really good place for us to be. I wouldn't be totally shocked to see more. Obviously, it's hard to get footage at Eagles training camp because reporters are not allowed to take footage while they are there. There have been a few times where people have secretly taken footage and uploaded it online so people could see, but it's really hard to see a lot of this offense, how it performs. So we're going to have to wait for the open practice on August 25th. I will be there. We'll have to see that. And also preseason as well. We'll have to see some of what offense they're really showing us during preseason. But with guys like Devontae Wicks and Darius Cooper shining the most, it really shows Jalen Hurts' ability to take. Obviously, Devontae Wicks is not a nobody, and Darius Cooper, to Eagles fans, is not a nobody. But to everyone else, they don't really know a guy like Darius Cooper. They don't know that Darius Cooper exists. They know a guy like Dontavian Wicks exists, but they don't know his full potential. I think we're finally seeing that in this offense, and Wicks might become wide receiver 2 this season, especially with how much Lemon has been sidelined. Don't be surprised if you hear more reports that Jalen Hurts is looking and acting the best that he ever has in his career. I mean, with ideas like Jalen Hurts having banter with guys like Jalen Carter, these are guys, the locker room has never fully been, I want to say, bought in on Jalen Hurts the person. The football player they've always been bought in on. Jalen Hurts the person is a little bit different. You've obviously had guys like Jordan Mailata and Devontae Smith who have been like Jalen Hurts guys. Like, they will hang out with Jalen Hurts outside of the training facilities. But now you're hearing more rumors that Jalen Hurts is interacting with more guys outside of the practice facility and inside the practice facility for that cause as well. And building more relationships, which is certainly something that I'm fairly impressed with. Hurts has never seemed like the outgoing guy, and I completely understand being the same thing. But to see that really unfolding in front of our eyes, and then Jalen Hurts getting, quote-unquote, this is literally a quote, one of the most different offensive schemes that he has ever seen in his career. Getting those two at the same time can really help an entire culture improve. Seeing Jalen Hurts unlock his full potential and him being more sociable with his teammates, opening up together is amazing. And keeping his body in amazing shape. Jalen Hurts, according to Vic Fangio and Jalen Carter, seems to be a lot faster than he was last season. So whether Hurts was dealing with an injury last season or whether he put on some weight that kind of weighed him down, I don't think we'll ever truly know. But to hear the fact that after a year where he was down in his production on the ground, to see that now both defensive coordinator and defensive superstar both say that Jalen Hurts is a lot leaner and a lot faster is something that I feel like we should take into account with how Sean Mannion is going to run this offense. So don't be surprised if we see Jalen Hurts back on the move a little bit. Not a whole lot. They still want to preserve his body for especially the postseason run. But don't be surprised if Jalen Hurts is a lot more lean, faster, and mean, especially in the passing department when it comes to mean. Darius Cooper, breakout player camp. Obviously, we've talked about Darius Cooper. He has earned that roster spot. He was one of those bubble guys who was going to have to battle it out with Johnny Wilson. And although Johnny Wilson could still make the roster, battling it out against guys like Elijah Moore and Hollywood Brown, don't be surprised if Darius Cooper is possibly wide receiver 4 or maybe even, depending on how Mekhi Lemon comes along, wide receiver 3. Eli Stowers finally made a play. Thank God. He caught he had a lot of physicality, especially against a safety group, and he was able to catch a touchdown on a busted play, so a busted defensive coverage. So we'll take that. It's nice to see Eli Stowers finally having a lot more prevalence during training camp practices. It doesn't mean he needs to be like the best player out there. I'm not looking for that. He's probably going to be tight end 3 behind Dallas Goedert and Johnny Munt. But to me, I think that this is a good sign moving forward that Eli Stowers is making some plays, especially with the second team offense. We'll keep on the offense here. Willie Lampkin, the backup center we've had, has been taking first team reps when Cam Jurgens has been out, and he has looked really solid. Like, outside of Markel Bell, who to me is like one of the biggest surprises of all training camp, Willie Lampkin to me is like the second biggest surprise coming out of training camp. Willie Lampkin was a second center or maybe third last season. I forget whether we had guard Drew Kendall as our second center last season in the depth chart. But Willie Lampkin has worked his way up, and he's become a pest both in the running game and the passing game, according to guys like Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis. And Moro Ojomo, he's dominated Moro Ojomo several times, even in 1v1 drills with the offensive line. Don't be surprised if Willie Lampkin is your backup center going into the season. I have full faith, based off of the past 2-3 practices, what has been described coming out of Willie Lampkin's abilities is he could start on a different team. Luckily he's on ours, but having a depth guy that's really good at so basically we kind of have 3 really great depth guys, one at center, one at left tackle, one at right tackle. Having those guys be as good as they are really puts a lot of confidence in me moving forward with the health of this offensive line, that even if, God forbid, somebody goes down, the guard position's a little bit different. I'm not so sold on the backup guards yet. I would certainly like to hear more out of guys like Michael Jordan. Not the Michael Jordan, the Eagles' Michael Jordan. And there's, who's the backup? Damn, I should have had this up. Let me see. Who's running with the twos? Holland Pierce. No, they moved Drew Kendall. And having Michael Jordan and Drew Kendall both at guards doesn't inspire too much faith in me. But having those other positions have major depth pieces is totally something that allows me to relax a little bit. And ultimately is something that I feel like will help the Eagles perform at a higher level later down the stretch. So we talked on wide receivers. Oh, tight end. We already talked about Eli Stowers. But I wanted to talk about Dallas Goedert. Dallas Goedert has been making a lot of plays recently at training camp, and it's been reported that Sean Mannion's offense could heavily involve Dallas Goedert as one of the primary options outside of Devontae Smith. And so to me, we could see, obviously Dallas Goedert, the Eagles fans had an absolute dominant season, especially in the red zone last year. But we could see an even better Dallas Goedert, maybe less touchdowns, but more receiving yards and receptions as a whole this upcoming season. So I just wanted to touch on that report, and what we've been seeing out of training camp is a dominant Dallas Goedert moving forward. So defense-wise, we already talked about the defensive line. Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Jalen Hunt, even Nolan Smith at times have all had really flashy moments consistently over the past couple of practices, over the last week of practices, even some of them since the first day of practice. I'm looking at Jalen Hunt. If you haven't bought Jalen Hunt stock, you got to buy it now, or else it's all going to be gone by the time that we get a few weeks into the season. But guys like defensive line guys like Ty Robinson, who has looked pretty good at times recently on one-on-one drills against offensive line, against second-team offensive line, does put a little bit of hope in my eyes that he could possibly make the roster as a bubble guy. Uar Bernard, I think, is making a roster based off of some of his performances that he's had at training camp. He's bullied second team and third team offensive line men, driving them back. He's just really strong, and the problem that he had with his technique was getting too high up while he was pass rushing. Was getting too high up on the offensive lineman, which allowed the offensive lineman to push him back. Now it seems like Clint Hurst has been able to really get into his mind that you have to stay low, especially with the power that Bernard has. Don't be surprised if Bernard makes a couple of flashy plays, possibly during the second and third preseason games. Defensive line is fine. Moro Ojomo has had a couple of good practices, and his agent has had conversations with the Eagles on extensions. I just don't think it will happen because of the Jalen Carter deal and the Jordan Davis deal, how much money they've tied into those two star defensive tackles. Although I would love to see a depth piece like Moro Ojomo stay. Don't be surprised if this is a contract year and a showcase year for other teams for Ojomo. For the linebackers, surprisingly, even yesterday, Jeremiah Trotter had a chance to start alongside Zach Bond on a couple of situation drills. And it really shows me that second interior linebacker spot might be a little bit of a rotating door depending on the scenario for Vic Fangio. It does not mean that Jahad Campbell won't have the starting job. Just don't be surprised if we see a really good Jeremiah Trotter Jr. get chances and take full advantage of them in his third year in this defense. Safety has been not really too much of a concern to a lot of reporters. Michael Carter and Marcus Epps have played really solid alongside alongside Andrew Mabuka, and Cooper DeJean is listed as a starting safety next to Andrew Mabuka. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot of Cooper DeJean up there starting in the beginning of games and then rotating in Michael Carter or Marcus Epps, depending on who realistically plays the best alongside Andrew Mabuka. So safety, not really a concern. Corner, not really a concern. Quinyon Mitchell has been one of the most dominant players here at training camp. Not even just like flashy or like surprising or breakout. He's been dominant. Really, outside of Devontae Smith, he's been locking down Dontavian Wicks and Darius Cooper and Hollywood Brown and Elijah Moore. He's been locking down all the first-team wide receivers that the Eagles have put out there. And don't be surprised if we see what I'm going to be coining as the absolute Mitchell. Don't be surprised if we see the absolute Mitchell or absolute Guantanamo Bay this upcoming season, where he sees that he's not respected as the top corner in his own facility or his own locker room. And so I think he might take that to heart, and not against Cooper DeJean, but he might take that to heart and go on a rampage against the league moving forward. Don't be surprised if we see Quinyon Mitchell become the best cornerback this upcoming season. And alongside Woolen's performance, who has ultimately been very good. Obviously not as flashy as Quinyon Mitchell, and not as dominant Quinyon Mitchell, is not as flashy as some other defensive players. Woolen, to me, is just going to be a quiet workhorse who might make an interception every once in a while, but I think he's going to be a quiet workhorse that is a solid piece on the opposite side of Quinyon Mitchell. So we'll just have to wait and see how this new duo, realistically trio of Mitchell, DeJean, and Woolen play in the cornerback department. But don't be surprised if we have a lockdown secondary because of those three. That's kind of all I have for this episode of the podcast. I know it's a little bit shorter than last week's, and I do apologize. I will be taking notes during the preseason game this upcoming Saturday, and I hope you all will be able to catch it as well. The Eagles will travel down to Baltimore, Maryland to face off against the Ravens and their new head coach, Jesse Minter, this Saturday at 7 p.m. So set your clocks, ladies and gentlemen. Eagles football is almost back on our TV once again. I've been your host, Matt, for this episode. I want to thank you all, and remember, go Birds!